scapegoat? This is the questions that EFCC raises. Rather than praise it, it puts down the image of the EFCC. That is not part of its duty. It should be the media even struggling to know. We should be seeing results. And not tell us we have tried. When you have tried somebody, what was the result? You should tell us that to this economy, the blue economy has added 10% of the GDP. The oil and gas has added 20%. EFCC has added this. This is what we want to hear. That should be coming from even the financial department and the economic unit of the government, not from EFCC. In fact, even the recovery from EFCC ought to be shielded. EFCC should be pleading with the media to cover it up by not announcing too much. But to call an entire, go to the playground to announce that you have bought clothes for your children for Christmas and that your children ate Indomie yesterday night. Is it an achievement of a father? What is your duty, primary duty as a parent? So if you are doing your duty, do you need to tell us? We should be the ones saying so. So I feel that the EFCC is overreaching itself. And it does not do good for our image, the image of the country as a country that is rated too high on corruption, and its anti-graft agency is now engaging in playground politics of displaying its own achievements rather than it being sung. Like somebody, I think Patrick Lumumba, the professor from Kenya, had said, when you start announcing and listing your own achievement, it means you have done nothing, because they should speak for themselves. So why do you choose, for example, ex-governors as a display of your high-profile political? There are people who are like the Binance Group, where you even get a president of America being called, having to make a call to another foreign country. That has become a major issue for a private business concern in America. It tells you that it is beyond mere Binance as a business entity. That it also is a very major stakeholder in the American economic interest in Africa, and especially for Nigeria being the largest black country on earth. So it is not for EFCC to keep telling us. CIA has not told us that they took out Obama or Osama bin Laden. They didn't tell us that. They didn't tell us that they are going after this. We only see the result. They didn't tell us this is what we are planning. We already have purchased 3 midjets. We have gotten 10 drones. So we are that is not the duty of CIA or any of those security agencies. So I feel seriously that EFCC should do less of the talking and less all the praising them for the results we see. When we saw some ex-governors being jailed, they didn't tell us anything before this present EFCC chairman. He should do more of his actions and let us see them rather than him getting us involved in these shenanigans called press conferences. There should be no press conferences.
Mr. Yusuf, do you allude to some of the strong positions of Honorable Obun? The EFCC scorecard listing over $248 billion recovered and over 100 million naira in just 1 year. Do you think that this scorecard is well blown out of proportion, much like blowing your own horn, borrowing from the words of Honorable Obun?
Not just some parts, but all of what he said. Let me take you back to the days of Obasanjo. There was an inspector general that went to jail. You see, when people begin to, when the masses see criminals paying for their crimes, you don't have to shout it out. Then we got to the era of something referred to as Abacha loot, talking about whatever amount of money you claim you have recovered. Where is the money? And basically what happens to it? We had one boss, former boss of the EFCC, that was tried at some point. I don't know whether he was jailed or whatever, but finally he was released. And when he went to his village, the welcome he received was almost like, yes. That is basically what Nigeria is. And that is why it's easy for people who are not delivering to say, they are not different from a governor who will call you to show you roads he built. Why did the people elect you in the first place? So, when people lose track, basically they resort to media propaganda, which is unfortunately where we are at as Nigerians, where you fail to do things. Who has paid for his crime, at least in the last 8 years? Who has paid for it? Of course, we are aware of the likes of Jolly Ingame and the former governor of Zariyi of Plateau State. They were in jail for some time, and other than those two, which if you go broader into it would look like it was more of a political move because there were so many other people more guilty than they were that were working freely. So first of all, the EFCC became compromised when it began looking like a political weapon against certain people, and now for whatever reason, it has become it's less of an organization fighting financial crimes and more of a propaganda, a propaganda machine. Why are we interested in that? We should see ex-governors going to jail. We should see people. There's the former governor of Kogi State that was more like what would I call it? Is it invincible sort of? And you hear the story today, and you hear the story today, and you hear the story. So the masses look at how criminals are rewarded, and then you think you can appease them by rolling out figures and all of what actually happens to those figures in the first place. And the masses really say, I did mention Abacha loot that we kept recovering. Exactly what was done with it, if at all it was even recovered. So it's more like you are a thief because we didn't steal together, or we didn't share the money together, and all of that. So it's just pathetic that the EFCC has become a propaganda machine. You come out publicly and you say things. Just the way the police will come out and say something. Just the way the military will come out and say something. If there is a responsibility you are primarily saddled with, we should see it happening. Your works should speak for it. Basically, that's the way it is.
Well, it's a consensus in the studio by our two guests this morning that the position of the EFCC in its scorecard, which has listed 3,425 convictions made in 1 year, to also include 240 billion naira and $105 million, all recovered within a year, are more like blowing one's horn. They're also saying that the citizens should be the one applauding the EFCC in its anti-graft efforts, if indeed they seem to be working. Now, this is just one of the items in the news as we'll have a conversation on the state of the nation led by prominent issues in the news. You would recall that on Wednesday, Justice Joy Abdul-Malik of a federal high court in Abuja issued an order restraining the River State government from obtaining monies from the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Accountant General of the Federation in her ruling on a suit filed by the River State Assembly and Martin Amahuelu as Speaker. She's saying that until a validly constituted House of Assembly issues an appropriation bill, no monies will be released. And there have been mixed reactions to this judgment. The River State governor has said, even with this judgment on ground, the salaries in River State can still be paid from its IGR. It almost feels as though we're back to another major issue in Rivers where a lot of persons have different opinions on. And let's talk about this judgment first and your opinion of what it entails for the good people of River State.
Yes, before I go into that, let me deal with the issue of just take one comment on the EFCC again. Like he tried to allude to the Kogi State case of Yaya Bello. I can tell you that the Yaya Bello case is one perfect example of the weaponization of an anti-graft agency. And that weaponization is targeted at political opponents. And that is the picture EFCC has unfortunately given, and therefore taking away the wins from its own sails on account of its inability to act professionally. Because the Bello case is an albatross on the neck of the present chairman of EFCC, because his attempt to dramatize the case of Yaya Bello is weakening his position to be seen to be neutral, to be professional, and to act in good faith and on behalf of the country and the people whose commonwealth and patrimony is being persecuted by political actors, especially of high profile. That is where we are on that. So for me, I think that EFCC, especially the present chairman, must have to look at his credentials again and tell us his pedigree and how he came into that office, because it doesn't appear that he is acting as a man who was prepared for this job. He is acting as a man who happened on the job, an accidental chairman who didn't know and does not know what he ought to be doing. And for me, that is very terrible for the country at a point like this where we need every kobo and accountability, and citizens are demanding it. Now to the River State case. Where are the CSOs? Where are the lawyers? And why are we having these mixed reactions? Why are we not telling ourselves? You talk about, when people talk, you go even serious mind, people you think are serious-minded, professional, senior lawyers. Some of them senior advocates, the silks. For a man to get to that rank, he should interpret the law correctly. I've been a lawmaker, and that means that I should have I'm not a lawyer. I should have a scintilla of what the law and its implications are for our country as a scholar. The judgment in Rivers State is saying you had 32 members, one died, one resigned on his own, so you had 30 left. And 3 out of that 30 sat and purport to appropriate money, to allocate money for the other 27. For the other 27. That means 27 state constituencies. The people of those areas. You are expecting the people of Andoni. You are expecting the people of Ogoni, for example, with about 4 or 5 constituencies. You are expecting the people, the Ijaw people, some of them who are also among the 27. You are expecting the Ikwere people. You are expecting the Pobo people. All those people, you are expecting that those 3 people represent them. The essence of the constituencies is that governance should go as much as possible to the grassroots. That's why there is that parcellation of and delineation of constituencies, so that the voice of those people will be heard on the floor in the sharing and the distribution of the commonwealth of the state. When 3 people from 3 areas or 3 towns or 3 villages out of 32 villages, let us domesticate it to that level. Let us reduce it and waterize it for the common man to understand that there are 32 villages in Rivers State, and those 32 villages, 3 villages, people from 3 villages sat, and we are sharing the food meant for 32 of them, and the 3 people sat to share it. And the other 27 people are saying, even when 2 of our people are no longer there, the other 27 of us, if we are there, at least 27 over 32 is fair enough. It means -5. But for 3 to take charge of the others is completely incongruous. It's never contemplated. Does not accord with democracy or even our natural sense of justice. So this is where we are. Now take it to the courts. What the courts are now simply saying, it is never contemplated by our law, neither by our constitution, that 1/3 of 30 should be 3. 1/3 of 30 can never be 3. So if that is so, why should those 3 people make any law that will be binding on anybody in Rivers State, especially dealing with the allocation? And you want the federal government to send money to you, and the federal government says no, you now equate it to the local government case in Lagos State. Where is the nexus? Where is the connection?
Under the then President Olusegun
under Obasanjo. Obasanjo says, look, you are creating additional development area which you call local government areas from the 20. You cannot do that. For that reason, we won't give you money because we don't want you to go there. And the Lagos State government was saying, look, give us money for our 20 local governments. How we use it is no longer your business in Abuja. That is the case that happened in Lagos. We have multiplied them to 57. That is, we created additional 37. Those 37, for instance, Shomolu local government, what do you call it, Ikeja local government, we created 10 additional. What we are saying is that Ikeja local government has 20,000 naira every month from federation account. Give us the 20,000. We will share it to the 10 people we created. It is no longer your business to tell us how to share the 20. You are not giving it to those 10 people we created. Give it the one that is in your paper, that is in your record. Give them their money. Once you give them, what we do with it is no longer your business. It is our internal affair to see how we do. That was the case in Lagos. But in this case, you are talking about the entire state sitting and money is allocated and 3 people purport to appropriate it. And the judges are telling you that it is not all, it is completely an anathema.
Now that you've set the basis and simplified it down with analogies, I'm very sure a lot of our viewers can understand. Let me get your perspective here, Mr. Yusuf, because the issue of 3 coming up with that appropriation bill emanated from what they said was a defection of the other 27 to another party. On the position of the law as to what that defection meant, many say it was just a verbal rhetoric and some politicking. But now, the main character in this story are the Rivers people who, whilst there's issues before the court of law, would have no way to benefit from the budget that is supposed to be implemented in the spendings of the government to give them the basic amenities they voted those lawmakers into the House of Assembly for. How do you see this issue unfolding?
Well, I would look at it from the perspective of the masses, the people, how primarily it impacts on them. Because at the end of the day, what is governance all about? Why do I vote anybody into office? Why is there any house, whether it's a state house of assembly or the federal house? So primarily, it only tells you what has happened to democracy in Nigeria. It only tells you the elements, those things that make democracy actually fast dying. That you've gotten to a point where, at the expense of the people who elected you, you pull certain stunts that I think if it was a dictatorship, you may relate with certain things. It's not just unlawful, it's not just undemocratic. I think it's criminal to a large extent. Whatever happens on the table, whatever comes from the court, whatever those people, whatever informed their impetus, you get the idea. They are doing so with outright or absolute disregard to the masses, to the concept of governance, to the concept of democracy.
In a situation like this, Honorable Obun asked for CSOs. He said, where the lawyers in River State, the lawmakers are supposed to be a representative of their constituencies.
That's right.
But at a time when the voice of the masses needs to be heard, which groups best speak for the Rivers people at a time like this?
Primarily, like he said, the CSOs should speak out. But you know, something that is happening virtually to every aspect of our country now is it's as if we first measure something. We first measure what either makes heroes out of us, either brings certain benefits out of us before we engage in it. So more or less like activism, where you find selective activists. There are certain issues we become active on, and there are certain issues we just fold our hands and do not care.
Especially the ones that have some level of clout about them.
That's right. So when CSOs step out to speak up, basically, Nigeria has forced me to actually read between the lines, such that it's not even every good intention that should be embraced. To a large extent, it might just be a means to a certain end that may be evil. And that's where the problem is. Because as at now, you just wonder, it's quiet, it's silent, it's as if nothing is going on. These are issues that would have overwhelmed it's an oddity that should overwhelm the whole country. But everybody goes ahead with his normal, stuff. And then from out of nowhere, possibly, you might hear a very loud sound from CSOs coming. More like we don't prioritize, we don't know exactly. And I think, let me just end by saying this. I think the engagement of a lot of these CSOs, or maybe individuals or statesmen that should speak up, has a lot to do with who is at the receiving end at the end of the day. If it's the masses, come on, man, it doesn't.
I'll come back to you, Honorable Obun. This issue in River State, a lot of people say it is with the House of Assembly, but it emanated from a fractured relationship between a predecessor and his successor. Many have said that the courts, being the hope of the common man, might not be able to solve this issue, and that a political solution should be preferred. How do people of River State find this political solution? Is it elder statesmen and the CSOs, much like he's alluding to? Or who are those who are now saddled with the responsibility of providing the political solution to quell the issue in River State?
I am an apostle of political solution to near kinetic and chemical reactions in the social domain.
Break it down to
that is to
our viewers who don't
you know that is what I will do next. I'm a teacher, so I will do that. Now, beyond the point of the actors, the shadow boxing, what we are seeing is shadow boxing. The real actors are behind the scene, and the people who are taking the blows are the masses. Now, they are now talking about this mass. These same masses have now been aligned emotionally to certain political actors. So those who are for Fubara are telling you, why are you disturbing him? You have taken your turn, you have chopped, so allow him to chop and don't disturb him and all that. You are dealing with a sociological crisis of monumental proportions because Rivers State is special and spacious to Nigeria. Sitting on the oil pipes and oil wells, a conflagration, I have said they should avoid the rivers of blood in Port Harcourt. If that happens, Nigeria will be the first casualty, because you are taking your oil from there, you have not diversified, you keep mounting diversification. As long as you depend on the arteries called the oil pipes, the arteries of to the Nigerian heart is the oil pipes running around the creeks of the Niger Delta. Not only in Port Harcourt, because the Port Harcourt part of the oil refining is sufficiently large enough to cause sufficient crisis for Nigerian oil production and gas. But essentially, the political actors doing this have stashed away sufficient public funds that they don't care if the masses go hungry and go to war with burning children and women all over the place with their carcasses fed to the cockroaches and to the vultures. They don't care. If they do care, then the solution is very simple. Even the people who are calling elder statesmen have taken sides. So they've lost the locus, they've lost the moral background and benching to take any decision that will be binding on any of the factions that are rising up in River State. On account of that, I have made the point in several of your sister stations that the president must step out. Let me tell you the consequences of what will happen. If they continue in that manner, sufficient relevant documentation in our constitution, relevant sections of our constitution, calls for the president to declare a state of emergency in that place. If that happens, I hear somebody telling you that the oil pipes will go blown up and all that. Of course, what that means, like I said, will be rivers of blood. Once that happens, the first people to be casualties will be the River State people, because they're not going to catch people in Sokoto State and go and put in those bunkers and in the creeks. It is the River State people. The second casualty will be the Nigerian economy, and the third casualty will be the entire world that will have to pay attention into humanitarian crisis that will come out from there. So this is how Operation Wete started in 1964 in Western region. These little fracases, this little Akintola, Awolowo is right, Akintola is right, and then snowballed into the crisis, and then of course developed because there was no attention sufficiently paid there. Some soldiers felt that was too much, and then other sections of the country saw it. It's a contagion. It has a political contagion that people will not think that if these people can do this, we too can do that. I warned very early in 2004, 2005, 2007 that giving amnesty to criminals who call themselves militants was going to create crisis for us, and that is what the Yusuf of Meduguri copied and thought that he too can do what they are doing in Port Harcourt and also get amnesty. Here they were not getting the amnesty and bringing them to be recruited into the Nigerian army. They turn around and become informants to their former colleagues, and the circle has gone on, and the issue of banditry will now graduated from Boko Haram, which has sufficiently been reduced. Now it is banditry and kidnappings in the same areas. So they graduate from and morph, transmogrify from one crime to another form of higher crime. And so in River State, if the political actors Fubara and his master are not going to be called to order, people are calling for the sack of Wike. There is no relationship between his work in Abuja. Whether you hate him or like him, he's doing well in Abuja. What he's doing in Port Harcourt is ugly because some people think that they are not benefiting or they are not given the opportunity to benefit. There is no way under the sun, under our law, in which you are going to allow 3 people to preside over 27.
I'll come back to you shortly, but let me come back to you. He has painted quite a graphic picture of how this issue can snowball into a bigger crisis. Now, he's also calling on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to possibly declare a state of emergency. A lot of reactions we got from some of our viewers since this conversation began on Wednesday was that the president had intervened earlier in the signing of a peace pact. Governor Fubara says he was strong-armed into that signing. What it would be a more diplomatic, should I say, way of bringing the two parties to the table again, so that this resolution this time is in the interest of all parties and we have no longer aggrieved parties who are ready to tear River States down.
Sounding first like the devil's advocate, I would say, as far as I understand this regime, as far as I understand what we have in Nigeria as a government now, the only solution would be for the governor to kiss the ring. That thing they referred to as a peace pact, he would not be wrong if he said he was forced into it. Having an understanding of who Wike is, an example, I was driving around and I said, well, he does have a strong will when it comes to delivering certain things. And then he could actually be on the extreme. You understand? Understanding who he is, understanding who the president is, understanding the political dynamics in the country. Rivers should tell every Nigerian. Rivers State should tell every Nigerian what is likely coming if it is not handled properly. It's a situation where somebody is supposed to be an executive. Somebody is supposed to be empowered with, executive, power and all of that. But then it's more of a class monitor who would pay dearly if he does not dance to somebody's tune.
To the tune of the headmaster?
Yes. How on earth do you have any peace pact under that situation? Somebody has to be subjugated. And the man feeling he's got the executive powers at his disposal will not allow for that. But both of them, to a large extent, do exercise some executive powers. Looking at the closeness of Wike to the president, and then Fabura feeling elected by the people. So first, the masses will suffer. And I would conclude by saying that as far as this government is concerned, frankly speaking, unless he just kisses the ring, there would hardly be peace in that state. And while Nigerians in Kebbi, Lagos, Anambra, Benue, Plateau are minding their business, we will pay dearly for it one day. Because all of these glorified political thugs you see, whether as governors, whether as senators, whether as local touts that are empowered during elections and all of that, those are all potential warlords. When things spiral out of order, they are all well equipped with enough money either to run away or to arm thugs or to do whatever it is they want. The Nigeria we have now is not a place where the lives of masses matters. When you look at how people are killed, when you look at how people are suffering because of this tiny decision. At some point in time, they may not really want that to happen. You may be hearing such things as rumors. Maybe in an interview they say, we heard you and this person are not in good. But it's open now. People coming out to make this statement, and then in another media round, this one coming out to throw it back and all of that. So it looks like Royal Rumble, wrestling, a fight. So he has made this move. Let's wait and see what this one. So it's more or less Nigerians have been reduced to just following the intrigues that happen between these power guys, and it's unfortunate. So frankly, I will tell you that I do not think there would actually be a solution to it, because the only thing that would bring calm to the place, especially with the people in power, is for the person there to reduce himself to a class monitor.
Someone
and
needs to play the fool.
Yes.
I'll come back to you, Honorable Obun, in listing some of the casualties of the projected downcline of this issue is the economy of Nigeria. But in the interim, the economy of Rivers State has been quoted to be in a financial limbo. The governor does not agree. He says that the Rivers people can rest assured that with the IGR, salaries will continue to flow. But very few states in Nigeria can brag of such. In fact, 32 states depend on FACT for more than 50% of their revenue. This financial limbo situation in Rivers State, how damning is it to the progress of growth and development in the states, as it were?
Let me tell you, what he has just done is to expose and bring us to a revelation that Rivers State has excess funds to have developed beyond what it is. That's what he has just said to us. That is to say, and which is what I had advocated for my state, and which my governor is presently doing, the governor of Cross River State, Basio II, is doing. Senator Basio II has shown that before now things could be done differently, even beginning from Ayade. Where Cross River State is begging to get 3 billion naira a month, and another state is getting 32 billion. That is from federation account. Then on its internal revenue, they are dealing with 60-70 billion from international oil companies, from taxes, from oil and gas, from derivation, from ecological fund. These monies have been sitting in Delta. Bayelsa has 8 local governments. As at the last time we checked, the voting strength of Bayelsa State was about 600,000 people, which is to say 45% of the total population. Which means the total population of Rivers State is less than 2 million. It's less than a million people with 8 local governments. What that means is that even if you put the allocation of Bayelsa State per household, no house will earn less than $1 million a month for the rest of their lives. Just like Kuwait before the invasion of August 2nd, 1991. Yeah. That was the permutation, that was the calculation of their GDP and their income in Kuwait. Now that is Bayelsa. Bayelsa earns more money than some countries put together. Now, what Fubara has exposed to us, he was an accountant under under Wike. So he is a laughing hangman. He hangs you whether he's laughing or smiling. He will still hang you. Wike is a frowning hangman. He will hang you by warning you ahead of time, I'm coming for you. So you get ready. So in that way, you are even better off because you can say your last prayer and meet your creator in good condition and in a state of grace. But Fubara won't give you that opportunity to even repent because he is a hardened negotiator. He's a hardened executioner. And therefore, the two of them put together are going to put rivers in problem. Between the Ikweres and the Jaws, who are going to be migrating from the largest of Ondo through parts of Delta down to the ones in Bayelsa and into rivers, and coming to show solidarity with their Ijaw brother, who they say, okay, you Ikweres have taken about 16 years, it's our turn now to truncate us and all that. Then you come to the Ogunis, who have been stranded with their oil debacle and all that. Who will they align with? So you are going to find an ethnic outburst that is going to be a war of attrition within the area. In fact, recently I was shocked when somebody from Enugu State told me that if they are going to go to regions, they in Abia, Ebonyi, and Enugu will not go with Imo and Anambra. So this so-called facade called ethnic jingoism, people drumming those points in those areas, are not following the Nigerian political trajectory. If they do, they will know that what is happening in rivers, what's happening in rivers is going for us to be an epicenter of an earthquake that will consume this country. So for me, the solution is simple. This president and the actors in Rivers State must be called to a table to say, what you are dealing with is a part of Nigeria. You are not living in a republic of your own. Your actions are going to affect us. There is what you call vicarious responsibility. The Nigerian state will vicariously pay if they don't pay attention to what is happening in rivers.
I think both of you have come to that consensus that the Nigerian state, be it whatever the political zone, needs to pay attention to rivers. But the challenge here is, beyond Nigeria, many had said it's a Sahelian wind that is blowing at the moment. It's blown out some countries out of ECOWAS. And much like he said, this sense of ethnicity, tribalism that we continue to look at one another from, even within a state as Rivers, has seen it leave the state assembly and dovetail even into the local council secretariats. Is there hope that this sense of unity and brotherhood can be restored in Rivers before it becomes a sad tale, much like all of us are projecting?
We have deviated for, I think, over 8 years, heading to 10 years now, from the deepening of ethnicity. Somebody is feeding it. There's someone that feeds that. It's a monster, and somebody makes sure it's well nourished. It's been on for a very long time. So at some point you might find that you might find the elements of that at the national level. So for somebody like me who is from the Middle Belt, when I begin to hear details of such, I now say to myself, okay, so actually they were never the same people. Amongst themselves, there are people who feel this way and those who feel that way and all of that. Once that sets in, which is a weapon that politicians have mastered the use of in Nigeria, more or less, you have a shop, I have a shop, and then you do better, and so you've got more customers. So it's just okay for me to go to my village and tell them, this man he speaks that language and all of that. He wants to just take our money and go away. That basically is what it's a politics that is practiced in a very, very primitive manner. There's so much of primitiveness in the practice of it, and it plays that role, and it has given birth to terrorism. It has given birth to what we call banditry and all of those things, and that's the reason why some problems cannot even be dealt with. Even though that's not the question we're dealing with, but when you look at terrorism, when you look at what's happening in northern Nigeria and look at what's happening in the Middle Belt,
it's traceable.
Yes. So you wonder why. What is it a problem to solve this? Is it impossible to deal with this? No, it's simply because as obvious as these are criminals or terrorists, there's somebody that feels aligned to them, either by virtue of ethnicity or religion. There was a point in time when Buhari felt even the war against Boko Haram was unfair to the north. And that made him a champion, because it looks as if he was fighting for us. But these are terrorists who rape your wives, who drag women into the mosque and mess them up and all of that. But it's as if once you speak up and sound, it is for my people, It doesn't matter whether you're a criminal, whether you're a rapist, whether you're a thief. It looks as if we have a tribal champion. So, like I mentioned the word primitive, we are reducing people who should be nationalistic, developmental in their thinking, to ethnic or tribal warlords, champions. That basically is what's happening. And to be honest with you, the Nigeria we have today needs overhauling. I appear a lot of times like a pessimist who doesn't see a way out. It's simply because of how much I appreciate the reality we currently are in. Nigerians at some point will have to unite, but then on what basis? Unfortunately, on the common suffering we all share.
Well, time is fast spent. In just 2 minutes in closing, Mr. Yusuf has enumerated it, but my question in closing is, some of these interventions, we've seen different nomenclature, structural adjustment programs, the concepts of the principle of federal character, but we continue to face this hurdle of when would Nigeria unite as one front? In closing, what are your hopes for our beloved country, Nigeria?
So much hope. I am incurably optimistic that this Nigerian state is brought by God to save the black world and indeed the white world. The entire world is going to depend on Nigeria in time. If you check your statistics across the world, if you call back the best graduates in America, they tell you they're Nigerians. The best doctors in UK, they tell you they're Nigerians. So if we're exporting so much from Nigerian universities, most of these people graduated from this Nigerian, we say it's a failed state. Graduates from Ibadan, graduates from Cross River State University, graduates from University of Benin, graduates from University of Port Harcourt, University of Maiduguri, Ahmadu Bello University, Bayero University, are all in UK, in Europe, in Canada as nurses, as doctors and medical, as lawyers, and doing well and being paid in dollars. And today we keep saying Nigeria is going down. This country is completely so blessed, too blessed to be cursed by any man's proclamations, by just declamations. But I can tell you this, more than anything before, this country is gradually getting out of the woods. The issue of tribalism, like you said, is just a weapon in the hands of few political actors who think that the only way in which they can survive. How come any millionaire you know in northern Nigeria came from Lagos? Did anybody remember that their houses or their Muslims? Never. But once it comes to political power, everybody start knowing that he's a Muslim. Look at the Muslim ticker that was almost becoming demonized. Look at where we are today. Is anybody still remembering that we are having that? The 7 service chiefs that the president first appointed, only 2 of them were Muslims. And today, we are having the entire field, the military operations are going on smoothly. There's a synergy, and then unlike in the past, where the Air Force don't want to talk to the Army don't want to talk to the Navy, today there's a synergy, and this country is gradually stabilizing. People are telling you that we are hungry. Yes, it's a phase we must pass through, because in the last few years, we've deceived ourselves into believing that we have arrived using oil money. And now there is a strong adjustment. I was just coming to your studio. The entire streets in Abuja are empty. This is a working day on a Friday. The entire street, I couldn't get 10 cars before I got to this place. I didn't see 10 cars on Abuja streets. Why? People now know that they can come by public transport. That the cars they have been driving, they have been telling themselves lies. Today, everybody is adjusting to it. So for me, I think there is heavy optimism that this country shall rise again where no man is oppressed. And so, with labor, good labor, peace and plenty, Nigeria shall be blessed.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for this robust dialogue. We appreciate you for taking our time to grace the program this morning.
Thank you.
Well, this is as much as we can take on this conversation. Be reminded that you can visit our YouTube channel to rewatch it. The State of the Nation, with 2 prominent issues discussed.